Hey all, this is 012 Boku and
Oh, it's the jackass, Jarek.
break the jackass down! Sorry, I don't know why.
Too much Devil Artemis for you, young man. Go to your room and think about what you've done.
Yep. But hey, we are coming at you again with another review, and again, we are closing in on a couple of the others, but again, we are back to, for this time, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, back to the anime. And I just wanted to say really quick, I know the channel has grown a little bit again. Thank you guys for tuning in, whoever you've been, the small handful of you, or the big handful in case, because I'll say getting 20 to about 50 views video is big news for me and Jarek here, because I will not take that lightly. Again, we're doing this for fun, and I didn't expect a lot of people would watch this, but hey, the fact you guys are growing and helping us grow and getting where we need to go, aces. But yeah, it's Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood again, even though I just showed you. And we are on episode 30, Ishvalen War of Extermination. Basically, in a way, another flashback episode, but one that isn't a recap. It gives you more of a, instead of the small little things of the Ishvalen War, it gives you more of the military perspective. In many ways, it shows you how you can go from being a nice guy to a hardened, hard-boiled soldier.
Yeah, this is kind of like the character building recap episode for a lot of the state alchemists.
Yeah, and again, not that I will say, again, I know what Hiromu Arikawa was getting at, since this is more based off her manga. I know what she was getting at with this, and I know that war does horrible things to people, war does terrible things, but that doesn't mean that I believe everybody becomes a monster, or that innocence cannot be regained after such things. It's just hard to gain back an old life after you've done all that you've done. Because I know sometimes, given this is my second time watching this through with Jarek, I really see how Hiromu Arikawa was probably, like, again, I don't know if she grew up during any of this, but I think she said her family was involved in this somewhere, so probably learning about the history.
Well, I'd imagine she was probably the daughter of people who did actually survive.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff this is based on, because I think she would be a little young for like World War II, but her parents would most likely be in that time frame.
Mm-hmm. And knowing, probably what she went through, what she researched, what she did, I can understand that. But again, most war films are anti-war, but I always have to say I support troops and I support people who defend the right for their things. And holy crap, that just got right behind us, because now we can't even see the window at all. So sorry, folks. I know our backdrop is very bright, but
Michael? Sorry, man. Winchester Brothers ain't here.
Yeah. Don't go into the light, Jared. Or go into the light, Jared. Go into the light. Jared, not yet.
Caroline, don't go into the light, Caroline.
And I just broke my stage name. Whoops.
Oopsie.
That was my own bad. Sorry, guys. But I think most of you knew that anyway from earlier videos. But anyway, yeah. 012 Boku. But hey, you guys got a sneak peek if any of you are new. But hey, don't come try to find me now, please.
But hey, if it was her intention to kind of like, cast the state alchemist in bad light, I have to say, honestly, for me, it felt like the opposite. Yeah, there were definitely a few psychos on the army, on their side, but to be honest with you, this paints a very flattering light, and in my opinion, a very honest light upon some of the other sides of the war, like Mace Hughes, who, by the way, has one of the most Mace Hughes moments ever in this flashback episode.
Yeah.
Alexander Anderson, dear God, I was already in love with the man, but smother me in your glorious manly alchemy, Anderson.
You mean Alex Louis Armstrong?
Alex Louis Armstrong. Sorry.
Wrong anime, wrong manga.
Wrong paladin. But hey, anyways, again, honestly, like the only one who honestly kind of comes off almost morally ambiguous would be Riza Hawkeye, and even then, you really get the impression she's only there for Roy Mustang. So, again, we do see more than a few people who take pleasure in their work a little too much cough, cough, Kimberly, the Michael Bay of the group. But on the other hand, we do see the other side, the people who come through the fires of war and honestly lose more than a little, but gain an understanding of the weight and importance of human life as a result. So,
Yeah.
good on you, Mr. Mustang. You're growing.
And as well, the reason we say that is because throughout this episode, you sort of get the thing that they did terrible things. Now, again, it wasn't fully mentioned wholeheartedly in the Japanese. They sort of make,
allusions to it.
Yeah, alluding to it. Yeah, allusions to it. Yeah, but in the English version, they basically do flat out say, yeah, we're a state-run, totalitarianistic, militaristic society. They don't say totalitarianism, but they basically hint at it, and again make allusions to it in English. But in English, we said it more flat out than they do in Japanese.
And it also is kind of interesting. I think this is only the second, maybe third time they've brought up the idea that the nation that the state alchemists are fighting for, I keep forgetting what it's called. Amestria only really became hardcore totalitarian after Bradley.
Yes.
It's kind of implied that they were at least somewhat of either a representational republic or a semi-democracy, but under Bradley, we're going full you-know-what.
Yeah, well, again, as you guys know from the previous episode where we learned Bradley's background, father set it up to be this way because obviously he wants endless war and endless conflict
and
to
Boku
support whatever he's going at.
As Boku kind of pointed out to me, we kind of got this in one other earlier episode, but this one really kind of hammers home the point that Roy's ambitions to become the new Führer and reform the government from within really seem to be because of how deadly efficient and okay with the tactics they were using that Bradley was. He was nothing if not an efficient genocide machine.
Yeah, and again, we'll get there. There's more to why we're getting at it. Like, I support, soldiers. And the reason I say that is I know what the military did in Ishvalen was bad. It was terrible. It's very reminiscent to the Nazis and Jews. And, again, I told Jarek, this is really, watching this episode, it really reminded me of Poland and Nazis going into Poland and doing what they did there.
Well, funny you should mention that. As I recall, I believe it was either World War II or Vietnam where the use of flamethrowers in open warfare was basically banned due to how brutal and sadistic it was to, basically box people into a building and then just light the whole thing up, which, by the way, we see Roy Mustang do. And it kind of goes back to Bradley. I mean, this guy is definitely every bit the military commander. You see him utilizing all of their specialities in alchemy with brutal efficiency, like having Anderson make giant walls to block off escape points so that enemies are choked into one area so they can be gunned down efficiently. Mustang going into a tall building and just lighting that shit up like it's 9/11.
Yeah, and again, the way that they felt about it and stuff like that. And I mean, again, we'll get to it near the end because it's mentioned near the end because this is all leading to what we were in. And again, not to say that me and Jarek have certain views, but we do, and we sort of didn't like what was said because it's like, I get what they want, but...
I mean, the people... I get the idea that this is meant to convey a very ham-handed message about this kind of war, but the thing is...
Well, and also justice, but again, we said that really was a double-edged sword.
But Ishvalen is really portrayed as just being these, like the Smurfs against Gargamel. If it wasn't for a Deus Ex Machina, they'd all be stew by now.
Yeah, and again, not to mention it, because I know you probably want to have us talk about the current episode, but if you guys do like these too, I mean, cool, we don't mind recapping a little bit. But if you remember when we saw Scar's background more in the Ishvalen War with his brother, you saw how his people were sadistic and almost evil-looking, talking about your brother could be the one to really do this. We can wipe them all out. Because there's a part where, again, not to get ahead of it, but Riza Hawkeye said, and Father probably used this to his advantage, but they wanted to succeed from Amestria, or there was a group of them who wanted to, and obviously father probably heard that, and right after that's when the child was killed and united the whole conflict. So again, never let a good crisis of a few go to waste.
And this is kind of another weird contrast between Amestri and Ishval. Is you notice like with the Ishvalens, the ones who are definitely more than happy to follow Amestria's lead and weaponize alkahestry into a weapon. You notice they're all younger men, like easily either late teens, early 20s, maybe early 30s. And the only ones really pushing hard against that shit and following the old ways are definitely the older generation.
Well, all the priests and everything that they showed, yeah.
Which, by the way, this is again a sign that Miss Arikawa is, kind of on that Chinese trip. But anyways, but with the Amestrians, you definitely see that it's the younger soldiers who are just horrified by what's going on. Bradley, couldn't care less, not important. Kimbley, he's having the time of his life.
Yeah.
And a few of the other ones, especially like that weird old guy we saw who had the peg leg and that scar iced
what's
earlier.
His name? Did I write it down? Oh, Kamache, or however you say it.
Yeah, him and like another guy are basically not giving a shit. I mean, one of them's a little bit more honorable, but like him, he's...
Bhaskaran, yeah.
He's basically not bothered until they get his leg off. But like, you see...
They took my leg! Those Ishvalen monsters took my leg!
Yep. But like, you see it's the younger soldiers, Mustang, Hughes, Riza Hawkeye, Armstrong. They are horrified, and you see that they're the ones who are going to light the fires of rebellion against Father and Bradley.
Well, in Armstrong, again, and I know we're 11 minutes into it, and I know we're doing all this backtracking, but if you guys remember, Armstrong said there's a lot of soldiers like me who care about the peace of this country and want to keep it, to know that everything we've done has been a lie. It would, not only does it destroy me, when this truth gets out, you will definitely have a true coup d'etat, which, that's what you would get, because you have soldiers who believe in the truth and justice. And then you have ones like Kimbley, who absolutely love killing. And I mean, again, to lead into it now, it starts with, again, a flashback part where we see Mustangs talking with alchemist Hawkeye, Riza Hawkeye's father, who was an alchemist. That's state certified because he was hearing stories at the time that the military was taking state alchemists and using it against the people, who says, that's going against it, what we need. And then, Mustang, I believe, used the quote, be thou for the people. And he's like, don't talk to me about that drivel. Yeah, we haven't been for the people in a long time. Don't say that to me.
If I remember, he said, like, don't use that rhetoric on me, boy.
Yeah, don't use that rhetoric on me.
And what's interesting, and Boku and I both picked up on this, I think Boku mentioned it first, though, is that Riza Hawkeye's father does not look that old. Maybe mid to late 30s at the most, but...
I'm going to say maybe to the age, maybe I'd say actually 50s from the way he looked, because definitely not a young spring chicken.
I'm thinking maybe like at the earliest 40s, but we did notice he was coughing up blood very similar to Izumi Curtis.
Yeah.
And considering the type of alchemy, he was like, this is the strongest alchemy, I've completed my work. It's because, Roy Mustang's like, but sir, if you guys stay certified, you would be funded. You could, you would have standing. You would be able to complete your research. And he tells him, "What would I need that for? I've already completed my research. The strongest flame alchemy." But the thing is like, number one, kind of bullshit. We've seen bigger, and number two, what did he have to give up? Because he kind of proposed the theory that Mr. Hawkeye might have done a human transmutation to complete his research.
Yeah,
and considering the tattoo we see on his daughter later, which I believe is probably, like a representation of all of his research.
Yeah, the equation of his research, yeah.
So, he proposed it first, and he probably fleshed it out better than I did, that he probably committed the same human transmutation thing, but he was too old, and probably not as strong as Izumi, so he couldn't really pay the cost,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes with it, because as he's dying, he's like, all my research, everything is with my daughter. Take care of my daughter. And, it's like he just dies, leaking blood out of his mouth. And then you see where, Mustang and Riza Hawkeye are well, not at his funeral, but they're presiding over his grave tombstone, and Bertel Hawkeye was his name, and he basically had just died. And again, they were talking about how, like what he did, what he was about, how it's sad that he died, but he had his ways, he was stuck in his ways. So doing the usual alchemic banter, but it was a thing where Mustang hands her a paper and says, "If you ever need me in Central, look me up. I can help you. I can do that." And she's like, "Well, I would like to be there for you, Roy, because regardless of what Father said, I cared for you, and I really cared, because he cared for you too, but in a different way. But it was more that you understood the alchemy you learned from him." And just to point out here, the faces of Riza Hawkeye and Roy Mustang are calmer. There's more joy in the face. They're not as hard-edged. It's like they're young, they're frisky, they're new at this. They're enjoying life.
And when you see them in Ishval, as Roy Mustang himself puts it, even her, huh? She's got the eyes of a killer too.
Oh yes, and then right before we get that, we see Riza Hawkeye back in the present, taking a shower, where we get the first hint of the tattoo on her back, which is what we're saying is probably her father's legacy tattooed to her back. How fun is that? and she gets out, and then she hears Edward scream out in the hallway, and she finds out that her little tiny husky dog Hayate bowled him over and said, "Bad, Hayate, bad." And then she lets him in, and Edward's like, I'm used to it. But then, hands her back the gun, which there was a weird flashback where Edward says, "Oh, I didn't use it, and I don't think I could have." And he was talking about the scene where Winry didn't kill Scar, and I think they forgot what gun she was using, because Edward got Riza's gun at the house before things went foobar at that house after they had captured Gluttony. The gun he had gotten there, Winry Rockbell picked up from a random soldier who was hurt by Scar, and Edward took that away from her. So I'm looking at that and going,
plus, if I remember,
I get it, but that's not even the same gun.
Plus, if I remember, I think she gave him, I think it was one of the older variants of, the Walter P99 or something along those lines. One of those, like the gun Bond used to have in the classic movies.
Oh, Walther PPK.
PPK, thanks. But, when you see him returning it to her and she's cleaning off all the gunk it got inside of Gluttony's belly.
Yeah, blood.
You can see it's gone back to a military grade 1911 chambered in 45. Because Riza's that much of a fucking Chad. But the weird thing is, he's telling her about Winry, how they confronted Scar and she wanted to kill him and she couldn't do it. And you can see Ed is... I'm sorry... Wait, it is Ed.
No, it is Ed.
Okay, yeah. You can see Ed is practically on the verge of tears. I mean, recalling this memory for him is painful. But what I found interesting is that she's, basically wiping off and cleaning the gun the whole time. But when he mentions that one part where Winry had the gun in her hands and he had to stop her and remind her of herself, she stops wiping. She stops cleaning.
She froze up for a minute, yeah.
And what's interesting is I kind of got the impression in my head, is she related to the Rockbells? Because, the Rockbells were in the military. They were doctors. Her father was an alchemist who clearly, had the potential to be fielded for a state alchemist. Me and him both have noticed that Miss Winry kind of has a very similar hairstyle and design to Miss Hawkeye, except Miss Hawkeye has the more serious slanted eyes, whereas Winry always has the more open, optimistic ones.
Yeah.
And we also notice both of them are shockingly intelligent, almost to an autistic degree.
Yeah. See, that is an interesting fan theory, because again, I don't think they were. We just sort of noticed that. But what I sort of think that scene was symbolizing was how similar she was to her, because maybe that's what it was for her when she first started fighting in a war. But at the same time, it's like Riza Hawkeye made the choice to kill, to protect the people she loves, which is why...
And she does mention that to Ed, doesn't she?
Yes. Because that's the next part she mentions. And I have to say in this scene, really quick, there was another part that me and Jarek had a little bit of a tiff with, and that's where Edward says, in both Japanese and English, they said it, where, a gun is something of evil, and I'm like, the finger pulls the trigger. The gun is the inanimate object. And I said, Hiromo Arikawa mentioned it once. I know what she's been through. I know what her family's probably been through, but it's like, given where we are currently in society, I'm tired of that, because guns have been... and if this gets us docked, I'm sorry, I don't care, you two, but guns have been used for defense and for good hunting purposes. It's not necessarily evil. The people pulling the trigger are evil.
Now I'll say this, because not only do I get a little upset over this, because let's be honest, I've gone to a school that's had 2 school shootings, and in one of them, well, actually both of them were drive-by shootings. I was almost in one of them, and in that shooting they fired 2 bullets and killed 3 guys. I was almost in that one, by the way. Hi, Choya High School. Nice to see you again. But for me, I'm actually kind of extra pissed about this, because in case you don't, understand some of the more, shall we say, philosophical principles of Samurai Bushido, they don't see the sword as a weapon. The sword is an extension of yourself. It is a tool. It is literally a part of you. That is why samurais basically disconnect themselves from the killing they're doing. It is not murder, it is not killing to them, it is an expression and an extension of their discipline and their adherence to their lifestyle. The sword is not a weapon, it is a tool. Now, on the other hand, you could say, bullshit. I mean, after all, people have said knights are bloodthirsty assholes, and certainly more than a few were. But hey, not like the samurai butchered an entire group of rebels because they were tired of paying too much taxes to the gentry.
Yep.
Oh, hey there, Amakusa Shiro of Tokisada. How's that nice little bonfire over at your castle doing?
I mean, and I hear you, and that's why we're not going to stay on this too long, because we know it's a touchy subject. But no, that's just what me and Jarek believe, and it's a line, I think, both in Japanese and English that didn't need to be needed, but I understand what they're going at. But again, it's to support free speech. It's what Hiromo Arikawa put. I respect that she put it. We don't always need to agree with it.
Or as 2 soldiers from the Civil War once put it when the fighting was over, "Sir, I may not agree with what you just said, but I will defend with my life your right to say it."
Yep.
Which, by the way, that was a Union soldier to a Confederate soldier post his hostilities.
Yep, and I mean, absolutely. And so we'll move on from that, but... it was through that where, Edward was actually shocked by what Riza Hawkeye was saying. Riza Hawkeye drives a quick bomb saying, "You must really be in love with her, are you?" Spit out the coffee in a cinematic way, getting Hayate all wet. Hayate shakes off. I'm like, "Oh, me, I love her, Wendy? No, she's just a really good friend."
We've been together since we were children. She's practically like family.
yeah, and Vic Mignogna especially, his reaction to that was great. Romy Parker was good too, but I give the edge of that to Vic. But through that, she's like, it's great that you have something to protect, and I'll mention this now too, because Edward after that says what really happened between you and Mustang in the Ishvalen War, and then at the same time we're intercutting between them and Scar with Dr. Tim Marco, who's saying, what happened to my people? What was this really about? And then basically we get the whole backstory of the war going on, and all right, now we go over to the next page. You right there, Jared?
Oh, there's just that one thing I want to look up for when we talk about the Chinese Michael Bay of the army.
All right, go ahead. I shall continue then. And it's like we see where there's fighting in the Ishvalen War. Again, the Ishvalens are Hawkeye goes through what we talked about earlier, where some wanted to succeed, and then the child was killed, and that started the whole Civil War, and just endless fighting without end. You had soldiers fighting, and Riza Hawkeye was telling Edward there really was no point forward in the war until the state alchemists, came in and started fighting. And again, you see them like, Bhaskaran, who I admit Bhaskaran was not the nicest person, but I actually do like, it was said better in Japanese, but in Japanese, and it was said a little bit like this in English, but it's like, he's like, make way for the iron blood alchemist Bhaskran, for if nobody says, for if I don't command the front, who else will? And I'm like, and again, I'm like, you could look at that as a jerky thing, but again, it's like how he's saying, where other men could give way to fear, I will take the front and be the beacon for men to stand behind me and, join me within this, because I will be the one to shield you all and take on all this to prevent something from happening.
When I saw that scene, I told Boku, gee, Luftwaffe much their air, whatever his name is.
Bhaskran.
Because if you don't get the joke, Iron and Blood, kind of a part of like the whole, two-headed eagle, old Germanic military pride. The Iron Cross, the blood of the Aryan people for the nation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a little spot on there, Arikawa.
And again, they show the same scenes that we've seen over again, except the blue eyes weren't as bright and accentuated. Neither was the hair. But, blue eyes, blonde hair. And then, we see other alchemists doing what they do. Again, like Jarek said earlier, Mustang torching a lot of people, mix of fire and blood going up. He's actually disgusted by what he's doing. Same thing with Alexander Armstrong. He puts up a huge giant wall. And these look like civilians who were just trying to run to get away. And then you just see people come up behind them who can't get through this wall, just being gunned down, backed into a kill box, and just gunned down for no apparent reason.
Sadly enough, these were all very viable tactics, both in World Wars I, II, and even into Vietnam. So yeah, what you're seeing, like when you see Armstrong just losing his shit, hearing the gunfire on the other side of the wall he made. This is something that happens to soldiers in real life.
Yeah, because he was horrified. He was basically there with one fist on the ground, the other fist covering his face. One of his eyes we see just wide in shock and in horror about what's going on. But then again, as you remember, in one of the last couple episodes, we told you how he was reprimanded by his general because he was holding that Ishvalen child. And he's like, this war's wrong. What we're doing to these people is wrong. I can't abide by this. And then they just said, well, you just leave. You're discharged. You're done.
And, I mean, it's sad, but I know from my own family, this is a very real thing. I've had, I believe it's 3 family members who were involved in Desert Storm. My mom was best friends with a lady who, her and her husband were in Desert Storm. And let's just say you never leave that war behind. It's always with you. Yeah,
and as you can imagine, Hawkeye was saying, there were the state alchemists, but there were also the snipers. Snipers have to be accurate and have to have things with precision. And are you okay?
Just talking about that made me remember Albert. Just remembered the whole reason why he had those flashbacks and reopened all of his wounds was because he was watching footage of Desert Storm on TV, and it kicked up his PTSD.
Alright, well, are you going to be okay, or do you want to take a minute? Do you want me to continue without you for a bit, or?
Give me a sec.
Alright.
Man, God, he's been gone for well over a decade and a half, and I still can't forget.
Well, that's good that you remember that person. I mean, I can understand.
Oh, dude, I'm never forgetting him.
Of course, you shouldn't.
I mean, seriously, 3 fucking wars, and that guy survived all of them. There are men, and then there are goddamn juggernauts made flesh.
Oh, yeah. And again, it's like I was saying, there were snipers, and that's what reason Hawkeye was a sniper. You see her taking out a couple bit of men, and again, like she was saying, you have to have precision with them, because you're not, like where she said regular soldiers and some men may fire erratically. Snipers have to be trained, have to be spot on. There's no mincing what you kill, and believe it or not, that's when, after that battle and skirmish, we go to Roy Mustang and Mace Hughes on a hill, and they're talking about it, and then Mace Hughes says, Roy, you have a look of a killer about you. And again, you see Roy Mustang hardened now, like we usually see him in the anime, hardened. His eyes are like shot. His face is just like sullen. The happiness and the softness that he had is gone. But then he basically, because we can see Mace Hughes' eyes, they're white it out with the sunlight and the glasses, but he says, "What are you talking about, Hughes? So are you." And then, like, we see Hughes sort of dip down, and we can finally see his eyes, and he's like, "Yeah, you're right." And then, he's got the same thing, sullen look, and just
But
face.
he does try to laugh it off, and this is, again, a very common coping tactic for people who've been through some hard shit. And of course, right at that time, he gets that wonderful letter he's been waiting for.
Ah, yes.
It's like, yes, she sent me a letter. Oh, my most wonderful dreams will come true. She's waiting for me, I tell you.
Gracia,
my future Yeah. And he's like, you better stop with that kind of talk. It's usually the guys who can't shut up about their fiancé who died tragically on the battlefield. He's like, don't even joke about that, Mustang.
Yeah, and then like, he also starts freaking out because she's like, well, she's been all alone. What if she's with another man? I can't deal with it. So it's all funny. And what happens is that he looks at the letter one more time without reading it, but he's like, well, now I can get through today and tomorrow. I can get through this. I have a reason to survive again, and it's her.
Yeah.
And basically, you could say Mace Hughes probably didn't want to be a part of this war. You could say maybe he's even being a little selfish. But again, some people were like that. They just wanted to get home and not be where they were anymore. So that's understandable. And, we don't really hear what Roy Mustang's is. But all of a sudden, we see where she's like, so, Colonel, you're here. I'm glad to see you. And she's like, I'm reporting for duty. And then, he looks over. And then that's where Jarek said earlier in the mind thought that he had, damn, this war got even her too. And all the softness in her and Riza Hawkeye's face is gone. She's just this, like...
But you can...
Like that, just...
You can tell she's trying to wear a professional face for him, I mean, God bless Riza Hawkeye, because... Honestly, to me, she's kind of like a bit of an older, more mature Winry, where, any bad thing can be happening, but God help her, when that man she loves comes into the room, it's all him,
Well, see, and I think that's why you and I were seeing the comparisons, too, because they're similar, but they're different.
Now,
Winry wants to help people she can't kill. Riza Hawkeye can kill, but she's doing it to protect people, to protect the person she loves. So, similar goals, way different contrasting styles.
Yeah, same dream, different execution every time.
Yeah, and then, believe it or not, they're going into the middle of the city where they're having, like, a lunch or a dinner, and, they're just sitting there eating, and basically, Riza's going through, like, I'm doing what I'm doing, Roy, but I can't believe I'm killing all these people. I can't believe what we're doing, what's going to become of us after this conflict is over. And then Kimberly chimes in saying, oh, well, you know what you should do? You need to remember who you kill, because it's either you or them. You have to remember who they are, what they look like, what do they sound like. Remember how your kill was. Are you seriously going to say you're going to hope that they all forgive you with all the people you kill? Come on, you even have to get some enjoyment out of it. I do. And again, this is, we don't see Mace Hughes or Ray Mustang, but Riza Hawkeye's face is going in complete shock. Like thinking, is he right about this? Like, oh my God, what does he say?
And Armstrong is basically blubbering at this point. He's broken almost. But the interesting thing is, I believe, like, what he tells him is, like, remember, you have to look them into the eye. Never forget who they are, because I guarantee you they're never going to forget you. And we actually hear Riza tell this to Ed later, which,
yep.
Again, it is sad, but honestly, you never get rid of those scars once you're in those kind of situations.
Because sometimes, depending on how the kill is, you always remember that person. You always say, did I really just kill that person? Did this person have a family? Did that? But...
That's why when you ask a person who's actually killed someone or has been in a real war, it's like, what hurts the most? It's like, it's not the scars you get from the battles, it's the scars you never get rid of, the psychological scars, the screams,
the ones I hear and hear. Yeah, those are the ones that don't really go away. That's why PTSD is a real thing.
And before this, we kind of got the story from Dr. Marco, I believe his name is
Marco,
about how that first little Philosopher's Stone changed everything. And of course, this catches Scar's attention. He's like, a red stone? Was it in the hands of a man, black hair, slicked back, look of a demon in his eyes? Yes, yes. What was his name? Tell me.
Yeah, and then like he doesn't say it, but we get the thing that he told him it was Self J. Kimberly, because that was leading into the next scene, because we see where it is, and there's actually this thing as he's giving the recollection of who it was, because like Tim Marco, you could tell they killed some Ishvalens that they had captured, but they were all sitting around the semicircle of the transmutation circle, and then the scientists are given off the circle to use the powers, and you can see where these guys are struggling in agony, and just something is hurting, and then you see their souls getting sucked out counterclockwise, going into
because
this philosopher's stone.
As the gems forming, you see like I'm gonna say it was like 8 little like strands of energy where all the different souls are kind of congealing. But as I as I told like Boku, I noticed like these like little wisps of energy that were like slowly congealing into the gem were moving counterclockwise, which for those of you who don't know, that's kind of considered a symbol of the devil, because the natural way of it is to move clockwise in motion with time and the motion of all things. So for it to move counterclockwise is basically a sign that this is an unholy thing. This is a crime against humanity and basically life itself you're committing. And while we're on the subject of everybody's favorite little war criminal, this is just my own postulation.
Oh, you were looking at that again, were you?
But I believe Kimberly is most likely a not so subtle reference to this individual. Now, if you have no idea who this is, his name is Shiro Ishii. He was a very gifted expert in the field of microbiology, and he became an army medical officer involved in a certain infamous unit that was operating in China during a certain period of history that shall go unnamed. But let's just say this man may very well have been the father of viral warfare as we know it. And a very sadistic piece of shit.
Well, and that's what we see in the scene. And again, that's cool that you found that when we were watching it, and found it again right here, because in the scene, we see it from his point of view, what he did to Scar and his brother and the other Ishvalens, where he like puts it in his mouth and like this glorious feeling, this glorious taste, the screams of battle and power echo through me, and then he does it, and then he looks over at the barren wasteland he created. He's like, yes, the symphony of destruction has begun! And like, it's just, you can tell he's a killer, that he wants to be here and doesn't care for the consequences.
And that scene also was probably more than likely a bit of a reference to several of the bombing campaigns and howitzer blitzes conducted by Germany, because there is very well documented evidence that there were more than a few soldiers who took great pleasure in the sounds of howitzer fire and bombing runs. Heck, you could even say Helsing Ultimate referenced that with the major's speech. Yeah. Gentlemen, it is said that I like war.
Oh, yes.
Gentlemen, I like war. No, gentlemen, I love war.
Yes, and basically that whole scene, which again, when we get to those, we'll definitely go through that too, and just how bad. I mean, the Nazis were bad, no doubt about that, but then when you learn about all the other parts of history, us in World War II, England in some sense as well, and even, Russia, they were way worse than the Nazis, but we just didn't know about it, because I guess since we were all allies at the time, hear no evil, see no evil. But, it's a sad state of affairs, because as it goes on and the story completes, we hear Hawkeye say, the war was over, it was ended, we all could go back home. Some people celebrated, some didn't, some were glad. And then we don't see Hawkeye's perspective, but we see Roy's, and we see the part again where Roy is talking with Maze Hughes, and they're accentuating it. Oh, I forgot one thing. There's one part where his name's in here. Oh yes, the main Ishvalen priest Lo wanted to surrender himself and a few of his men to save the rest of the tens and thousands of Ishvalens who were trying to leave. So they gave themselves up. They were brought tied up and everything before Fuhrer Bradley. And, Lowe gave his proposition. And, you have the Fuhrer go, so you want an equivalent exchange with your life for tens and thousands of Ishvalens. That can't be done. That is not equivalent exchange. Are you telling me your life is worth that of that many people? No. So gentlemen, the killings will continue. And then they all start screaming at him, saying, our God will punish you. Our things will do this. And they didn't say this like in Japanese. I forget what he said in Japanese. It was a bit more of the philosophical take of, you have to be better than me, you have to be smarter than me, and, if you want your God, it was like something, if you want your God to help, make sure your God knows where to strike. But in English, I believe I know what he said to the equivalent. He's like, there is no thing for gods. Gods are just creations for people like your priest there for you to hold on to. If you wish to take me down, be stronger than me, get stronger than me, and make sure you're the first ones to do it, not I. And I'm like, yeah, that's cold and ruthless, but that's not far from the truth when it comes to war.
It's kind of funny, too, because, Bradley basically works for a guy who's damn near possessed by almost a god, who's trying to wage war against God. So, honestly, it just kind of adds even more hilarious, contrived irony to his heresy that, you're telling him God is just a figment of your imagination. It's like, you work for a guy who's damn near a god himself and is waging war with one.
But, again...
Hey, I'm not going to argue with Brad the Chad,
Well, again, like I told you, the utter hypocrisy of the situation. And then that's when the war ended and went into it. Because, I almost forgot about that scene, which was a real good scene as well, which is why I went over it. And, you have Mace Hughes and Roy Mustang, given the idea that, I'm going to become better. I'm going to get together a group of people and we're going to bring back and bring peace and prosperity to this land. And again, I know we've seen it like 4 or 5 times already in the show, but they do the stare-off between Mustang and Bradley again, which I'll admit is great every time to see it because it's just one of those things of, I'm coming for you and I'm staring at you. Well, I know you're coming for me, but whenever you're ready, big man.
And you can see that Bradley is noticing this, and it's almost like he's acknowledging Mustang as like, give it your best shot, kid.
Acknowledging it, but it's like, whenever you're ready, let's do this. And again, it ends with Reza Hawkeye giving the final things, and this is where, I know we're already over 40 minutes, and I'm sorry for like going a little long in the tooth, but I even told Jarek this one may go pretty long here, because again, this is the part that really sort of got to me in Jarek, especially when they said it in English, because I don't know if I didn't read the subtitles fast enough, but they mentioned something about where everyone who committed their crimes would pay for, what happened at Ishval, and I think, both Edward and Japanese and English said, but you guys didn't have anything to do with that. Yeah, but we were the ones who did the atrocities, pulled the trigger, did the things, so, we're holding everyone accountable once. And then in English, this is how I forgot what she said to re-sum it up in Japanese, but in English, Colleen Quinkenbeard / Reza Hawkeye, who does her voice, said, Roy is going to hold everyone accountable, and everyone who committed crimes against Ishval will be arrested and put on trial. And then I'm like, wait a minute. You guys were a part of that too. So if he becomes the Fuhrer, is Roy only going to be Fuhrer for 5 minutes? Because that would inquire he would have to put himself on trial. And,
And Boku and me agree, this is stupid and this is my reasoning for it. Because nobody would make a better Fuhrer than Roy Mustang. He's seen the atrocities, he knows the horrors, he's seen alchemy abused, he's seen what happens when corruption reaches all of the highest levels and becomes insurmountable. Nobody is better suited to understand how to properly run that government the way it needs to be than him. And what better way to atone for it than by living and making, what's that country called again?
Ishval their country, Amestria, yes.
Nobody's better suited to make Amestra the nation it should be and should have always been than Roy Mustang.
Well, and the only reason I brought up sort of the hypocrisy of what Reza Hawkeye was saying, and I don't mean to call Reza Hawkeye a hypocrite, but how many people has Scar killed? We already heard Scar killed handfuls of the state alchemists in this war, and so how many are left? Camache's dead, Basgran is dead, Kimbley's in prison already right now, and, you know, you had several others, and, you know, Mustang and, you know, what's-his-face, Armstrong are already trying to make amends. Sadly, Hughes is dead, so I understand, but that kind of a way may not benefit you, and I don't mean to think political and say that they shouldn't atone for it. If he wants to be Fuhrer, you make a public apology to the Ishvalens. You establish true, mind you, not what we think of today, but true reparations for that country and state as long as you can afford it. You probably establish a memorial wall out there commemorating all the people who lost their lives in that war and to all the innocents who were killed. You make sure it's taught in your schools. You make sure what happened was there, that the truth of it is revealed. You don't hide anything behind a sheet or behind the curtain and never let the truth be known.
And this is why it's a stupid idea to tear down statues and memorials, even to our greatest villains or enemies, because honestly, if you tear down a statue of General Robert E. Lee, what have you done? You have destroyed a monument to history. And now there's a good chance that people would have only gotten interested in that aspect of history and learned from its mistakes by looking at that statue and asking themselves, what did this guy do to be so hated? Maybe that would have led to them going to a library, reading up on the Civil War. But now, you've destroyed a piece of that history, and the chance for people to learn from those mistakes is gone.
And to that one, what people understand, what people forget is, and not that I want to take it to this arena, but Robert E. Lee, apparently still to this day, is still one of America's most beloved generals. Not because of, yes, maybe keeping slaves and fighting for what the South was fighting for wasn't the greatest thing at the time, but he was true to his men. He really was not a nasty person. He was a very nice general. He was a very philosophical person and a very well put together guy. And all the men loved him.
And hey,
yeah, most beloved general in history, I think, for a reason.
And hey, before we get in danger of going full rageaholic on this one, I'll just say this. You know who was the first person who was selected by Lincoln to be the leader of the Union Army? His childhood friend, who he had known most of his life, Robert E. Lee.
Yep.
He only turned down the offer because that would mean he would have to go to war against his home state of Virginia.
Yeah, which...
Watch Gods and Generals, children.
Yep, which again, I will not read it. I cannot read it. And he even says that, I never thought I would live in a day where I would see our president, raise up arms in his own country against his own people. And again, that's why I say, this is why we also need to remember the Civil War. Both sides did bad things. Both sides did good things. What were the differences and contractions, but what made us good for each other? What also made it bad for both sides? Because again, Union prison camps were way worse than the Confederates. Confederate generals, when they were fighting in wars, not maybe the Virginian part, but Georgia and all the ones more south of Virginia, very ruthless
but hey,
people. And
speaking of acts that should not be committed, primarily as an act of vengeance, in a sad ending scene. Now, for a little context, Dr. Marcoux was pretty much goddamn psychologically broken already. He had committed one nationwide genocide in Ishval, and now he was probably going to be used as part of a second one, and in comes Scar, and what's the first thing he says? You appear like a god to me. Please, I beg of you, kill me so that you can slow down and halt what they're planning. And of course, Scar, not realizing this man has already suffered on a level he will never understand. I mean, yes, you lost your brother and your people. This man had to commit those crimes and live with the guilt.
Yes.
And what does he do? He kills him.
Yeah.
This man cooperated.
And then, you know, Envy comes in with some dinner, and then his body with vengeance written on the wall.
Literally just splats his head.
And blood.
Yeah, and I mean, this guy, he cooperated with Scar fully. He wanted to die, and I mean, it would be sad to force him to live with all that pain and suffering, but Scar, you need to let it go, because I know where this story is headed, and
again,
let's just say
like his master said, don't let vengeance become you, because do you think this is what your brother, your mom, and your dad would want?
Because, I mean, you may be a monster, Scar, but there's always a bigger monster.
Well, he's already met it with his father, going, how does my alchemy not work against you?
But, you know, again, this was a beast of an episode, and honestly, if you haven't seen Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, watch that shit.
Yeah, and I guess with that was the end of the episode, and we can actually get to our favorite cast members. For me, I think I said for this one, yeah, I have to say, basically in a one-way tie for both characters. Because I was sort of explaining this to Jarek after we were watching it. I gave it to Roy Mustang, Travis Willingham, Shinichiro Miki, Riza Hawkeye, Colin Quinkenbeard, and Tomiko Orikasa, because both those characters, the reason they're tied for number one is they were really such a driving force in this episode. Both versions gave great performances, great stuff. You really felt what they were going through, what they were having, and what was, you know, taking place. I mean, overall, this was another episode where all the voice actors involved, for the most part, were really good. Some of them, you know, a little like that. Oh, actually, wait, before we continue, I forgot. There was a thing where, remember, Alphonse was leaving Dr. Doc's house?
Yes.
And like, you know, he wanted to help, Fuyu and Mei Chang, and then, like, she's like, you know, I gotta go back to my brother. Oh, yes, your brother, the mean boy. Yeah, he's mean. I'm not mean. I'm actually better than he is, and I'm taller than him, and I'm a much more nice guy. And then she's standing there, she's like, huh? Because when she was imagining Edward like a little imp, like dragon breathing fire, and then all of a sudden, you know, Alphonse says all that, and she's like lighting up, like, you know.
Yeah, and now she's having the daydreams about him when he gets his body back.
Yeah, Mei Chang and Xiao Mei were like that. Yeah, he's got like the spiked short hair, maybe the like ponytail thing in the back, and then the rose in his mouth and the gleam in his eyes. So she's all excited for that too. I forgot to mention that.
Hey, the panda would like it if nothing else.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, of course. And you know, so sorry, I forgot to mention that little tidbit as well. But again, you know, that's the reason why I go with those characters, because such a good driving force and great performances. The second one I would have to say, let's see, you know, it is hard, and I thought I wasn't going to do it, but I will give another two-way tie here, because, again, I love the character. I love King Bradley, Ed Blaylock, Hidekatsu Shibata, but I also have to give it to Maze Hughes, Sunny Strait, Keiji Fujiwara, because both those characters gave great performances as well. It was nice to see Maze Hughes come back, given that he's dead in current time, and, you know, good to see Sunny Strait and Keiji Fujiwara reenact the voice again and just like give his thing. And oh yeah, I forgot, after when he was fighting in the war, he asked Roy, you know, and that's why I was saying where he was looking up at the Fuhrer, wanting to become Fuhrer to bring peace. That's when they were discovering what they wanted to fight for. And Mazu said, you know, I'm only fighting to get back to my wife, because he said when he was leaving, that's when I was fighting for. And there was another small thing in the flashback where Roy Mustang's in his office, and Riza Hawkeye steps in and he's like, so, you really want to be by my side? Yes, you know, I will stay by your side. I will follow you there to back in the hell just to see you safe. So you can see where she's fighting to protect him, and he's fighting for the peace of all, and Maze Hughes is trying to get back to his love, but still, you know, great performance by Maze Hughes. And King Bradley, Fear Bradley, great. It was a short scene, but such a great scene from Ed Blaylock to Hidekatsu Shibata. Just the whole uncaringness and just just downright of like him not caring and basically telling the head priest to his face, your life ain't worth shit to your people. You are not enough to save the life of your people. So the massacres, buddy, will continue. And think about that when the blood is on your hands. So, and for the third one, I have to say, because this performance was just, because this is the first time we got to see him wholeheartedly in a huge fleshed out role, but Sulph J. Kimbley, Eric Vale, Hiroyuki Yoshino, such a crazy dude. Both performances were done so well. Heartless, shrill, loves killing, doesn't care what he does. But I will say, when he got the Philosopher's Stone, Hiroyuki Yoshino, you did a good job acting the character. But Eric Vale, I got to give you a shout out, man. When you got that Philosopher's Stone, you went absolutely batshit nuts and completely crazy. And I know you're using a more harder edged sounding Trunks in this show, but I still can't believe it is like Trunks. But it's like, you make Trunks like Trunks went crazy times 20 in this one. Because holy crap.
Trunks went full Vegeta.
Yeah.
I am the Prince of all Saiyans. I will not be broken.
Yep. And pretty much, but I have to give the edge to Eric Vale, because that whole ending scene where he got the Philosopher's Stone and just surveying his destruction, wow, crazy nutty, man. But how about you, Jarek?
Well, for me, for the first time ever, mark it on your calendars, kiddo, I'm going with a three-way tie for what I consider to be the holy trinity of the war actors here. I'm going with Kimbley for the psycho murder enthusiast, because, good lord, man, you freak me out. I had no idea Trunks had it in him. Number two, I'm going with Roy Mustang, because if there's ever anybody who epitomizes, a man burned by the horrors of war, determined to put them out, it's Roy Mustang.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, spot on, bro. Love ya. And number three, I'm going to have to give this one to Brad the Chad, because, dear God, his military genocide is like his alchemy. Cold as ice and by the numbers.
Yep.
As for my number two, of course I'm going to have to put Riza Hawkeye on this, because, dear God, she just barely missed out on the Holy Trinity, man. She was good. If you ever want to... Again, every woman in this show does some of the best feminine but strong and adaptable women I've ever seen in anime. Good Lord, these ladies, Faye Valentine, give them the black evening gown for breakfast at Tiffany's. I'm taking you to dinner, girl. As for like my second number two, I would definitely have to give that to everybody's favorite alchemist, our favorite wizard, and the anti-bitch lasagna himself, Vic Mignogna.
Yeah.
You, sir, never fail to impress. Keep up the good work.
Yeah,
Keep up the fight.
Even though he wasn't the focus of this episode, it was a good performance. Plus, his wig out makes me laugh.
Stealing scenes
it's not me. We're just friends.
He's stealing scenes and he's stealing Winry's heart.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work. And as for number three, I can't believe I'm doing this again, but I have to give it to Monica Rial. This is the second time she's managed to freak me out with being not Monica Rial.
And since that's different from somebody I said, Monica Rial, my go-to who did the voices.
And, I mean, again, this cast, this is like, I hate to say this, I'm almost more impressed with these guys than the cast of Black Butler at this point. You guys are fucking killing it. And, if I kind of have to leave this off on a bit of an odd note, not sure how many people are going to remember this, given all the hubbub in the 90s, but, 2 days past 18, he was said the pension is agreed. Sat down on a bus. Cafe there, gave his order to a girl with bow winter. I'm sorry.
No, don't worry about it, dude. I don't know if they can understand you either way, because not even I did, sadly.
But yeah, for those of you who, sorry about my blubbering, but it's from the Dixie Chicks song 2 Days Past 18.
Oh, okay.
If you've ever heard that song.
I've heard of it.
That, God, man, that movie Parenthood. I will never be able to watch that without crying.
And well, it's understandable, and again, the things we talk about, and nobody says men can't cry. I mean, we definitely can. I mean, hey, you know, it happens, but hey, no worries, Jarek, no worries.
And hey, can we seriously forgive them now? Because we all hate George Bush at this point. Can we just say the war against the Dixie Chicks is over? Just saying.
Well, who remembers them? Hi-oh!
That's what kills me, man.
But also as well, you know, for final thoughts of it, great episode. I'm glad we got. I don't know if it's the whole thing yet, but I think this may be the last episode where we go back to the Ishvalen War before everything starts going forward. But great way to just surmise it and the horrors that went on there. Great way to show us what Roy Mustang, what Risa Hawkeye, and all these other characters lost. And just it really just nails home the core about how everybody has something to lose, but also everything to gain. At least in the fight for good. The fight for evil, they're just like, we don't care. And holy crap, did we had a good pointer or something? I feel like the holy light of the Trinity is coming into the room.
I think Michael's trying to tell us he likes our work.
Hey. But, it's...
You know, to that point also, I kind of feel like this whole episode was like an allegory. It's like, yeah, they lost a lot in the war. Their innocence, frankly, the ability to ever live without that guilt. But at the same time, as Roy Mustang himself said it, they'd gained a purpose. They knew what they wanted to do, what they needed to do, and God help them, considering the odds they're up against. Bravo, Mr. Mustang. You got cojones. You got grapefruits, my boy.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you know, it's just, it really is about that, like, what they're fighting for and what they're going for. And I mean, are those your final thoughts as well, Jared? Because I really don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, it's, anything more, and I'm going to wind up like Armstrong on the floor, you know?
All right, yeah, let's not do that. But hey, you know, again, what do you guys think? Do you agree with our thing there? And also, again, I will say it again, I'm sorry we took it to the political arena a bit today. Again, if YouTube has a problem with it, I don't care, because free speech should be allowed, and plus we didn't say really anything that bad or out of it. Plus, if any of you think we did, you don't have to watch the video. You don't have to.
You know what I just realized? We're about 8 days away from Memorial Day.
Yes, we are.
So, hey, good timing on this one.
Hey, alrighty. Well, then, yeah, just, you know, whatever you guys think, just leave down below. Let us know how we're doing, and if you like this episode, and also, have you even started watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood? And again, I know it'll drive you guys nuts, but since we're almost done with the first part of the show, I know we have the second part to do, but like I said, when we're done with this one, we're going right into the original, because I think, hey, they go hand in hand, so why the hell not? But until then, this is 012 Boku, and...
This is Warrant Officer Jackass signing off.
And we'll see you guys again. Deuces.
Deuces.